This is our opportunity to ask questions. So, Jamie, I have the yellow mic up here, and so we're going to invite you to come up here and ask a question because, of course, the people who are online would also like to see your lovely face and hear whatever question you might have. So to think about if there's something that, or it doesn't even have to be a question. It can be a topic you'd like me to address. Something that you want me to talk about, again, in terms of the philosophy, the science of mind, how we practice it, those sorts of things. So I'm going to give you a second to think about it. Come up here, stand up here. We'll create a little line. Hopefully there'll be a line of people who want to ask something. And so come on over here and start it over here. I do want to say to you that we do have a visiting minister here, Reverend Casey Taylor. So Reverend Casey Taylor, Reverend Casey has a focus ministry on Spirit Uncensored that works with young adults. She was instrumental in the Next Gen retreat that we had young adults. We had 8 young adults go to just recently, and she's been in Oklahoma, and so it's really lovely to have you in the house. Thank you so much. Great. All right, so please do say your name so that everybody knows who you are, and just carry on.
Okay, I'm Randy Stem.
Hi, Randy.
So I've got this dilemma about the world that works for everyone, and how do I make space for those that are radically opposed to my philosophy, and their stated philosophy is basically to eradicate people and persuasions of my philosophy.
That is a great question. So we could begin in a number of different places to answer that question because it's important. It's an important question. First, I want to start with what we don't want to do. And we don't want to misunderstand that acceptance of every human being means that we accept every thought or action of a human being. Yes? Right. It can be very challenging to be unaccepting of someone's activities and practice true unconditional love, which means recognizing that each and every human being has value and they have a place in life, and they, like us, are doing the best they can to express life and love as they understand it. But a world that works for everyone is, by definition, in alignment with a life that is for life. And so our fundamental ethic is do no harm. It's a little hard to always know the unintended consequences of things, right? Sometimes we do harm inadvertently. It also is sometimes hard to understand that sometimes something that feels harmful we do in service to someone we love, like say no, right? So we can roll that off as a platitude, but it's not necessarily the simplest thing to live. Neither is unconditional love. So I believe that we are not required to accept every thought, every belief system. We are not required to accept it if we truly believe and see that it is doing harm. Our job is to hold the vision of a world that means that the way in which people take up their philosophies, their belief systems, and their ways of being in the world are always for life and don't actually intend harm. There's many ways in which we can act on that. We can choose not to have certain conversations. We can choose not to engage with certain people. We have that right. We can choose to speak our truth with as deep a conviction as we hear others speak for things that we believe are harmful. The most important thing is that we must choose to participate in creating a world that works. It's not enough to wish that other people would stop doing what they're doing. Is it easy? I'm not sure anything about the spiritual path is easy. Takes diligent thought, diligent effort, a heartfelt recognition that we really are all one. And it's okay for me to say, no, you can't do that in my house. This is my house. You can't do that here. This is my family. And no, you can't do that to any one of us. Not just this family, not just this family. This is my family. And the answer is no, you can't do that. Do you see? And so these are important questions. Now, do I feel like you have to convince the person that they're wrong? No. You don't want them to convince you that you're wrong. That's called treating someone how you want to be treated. Right? If there's a willingness and an openness for listening, of course you can have a conversation. But it starts with my faith teaches me, as opposed to you're wrong, or bannering around scripture passages to prove to you that I'm right and you're wrong. My faith teaches me to see it this way. My spiritual walk teaches me to see it that way. And I will not support, give money to, or vote for things that are out of alignment with what I believe is the way that we create a world that works for everyone. Now, do I know everything there is to know about how to create a world that works for everyone? No. Could it be that there are things that you're doing that I don't like that might be part of making a world that works for everyone? Could be. As long as you're not doing harm. I don't have to know all the answers. I just have to do my part. It's a brilliant question. We should be asking these questions. There are not, we do ourselves and the people around us and the challenges of our nation, we do them a disservice when we give lip service to an easy answer. These are heartfelt answers, and each one of us do, in fact, have to navigate this with loved ones, family members, people in our communities, and people who are actively advocating for things that we believe are harmful or out of alignment with our teaching. This is why we have a democracy and advocacy initiative now. Why shouldn't we advocate just as powerfully for what we believe helps create a world that works for everyone? Yes? Yeah, thank you. All right, so please come on up here, Reverend Casey.
I appreciate it. Good morning, y'all. I am such a fan of this community and grateful for that answer, because as a minister, I get it all the time, and that do no harm and being for life is something I am absolutely taking back with me for my ministry. One of the reasons I'm here is because the Friendsgiving Young Adult Circle occurred yesterday, and I drove up for that. And this community does such an incredible job, I believe, of supporting, nurturing, and encouraging young adults. The Young Adult Circle here is thriving in comparison to CSLs across the country. And as I reviewed the 2024 goals, I noticed there's a lot of pictures of the young adult community, but I didn't see anything around intentionally investing. I know the community is supportive, but wondered if there are any initiatives around supporting, encouraging, investing in the young adult movement within this community.
That is a great question. Thanks for asking that question. So we also want to say a huge shout out to Lauren, who is heading up our young adult program and is doing a fabulous job. Yes, really. So it's a great question. So our investment is in relationship to how much the young adult group wants to be invested in. So we're still in that conversation. right? Because it's a very much a two-way street, and so that's a conversation. We certainly have been supportive of the Next Gen retreat, and had they not been able to raise enough money in the way that they did, or had enough money in their funds, CSLDallas would have paid for everything that was needed, and we continue to support in whatever way they choose, really, because we are not about to dictate what the young adult group should be doing or not doing. So thanks for that question. I mean, I can stand up here and start talking about whatever I think you need to hear. Come on up here.
Hi, I'm Kia.
Hi, Kia.
I have a question I'm looking for either a tool, a treatment, spiritual practice to do before I am put in a situation with family who I may have a dysfunctional, toxic relationship with.
Because the holidays are coming up?
Because I'm going home for the first time in 10 years.
Oh, wow. It's a great question. Let us surround you in love and light. Right? Yeah. And for all of us, it's a challenging thing. Don't you just wish people would just be the way you think they should be? It's so annoying. If they could just get a clue. It's a great question. So isn't the most ridiculous thing that doesn't matter how old you are, you walk into your house and you're instantly 12? It's just, for me, for years and years and years, right? I was either 6 or 12 or 14. All those behaviors come forward, and then we take our place in the family system, don't we? Whatever our place is, the clown, the peacemaker, the quiet one, the one who always takes responsibility for everything, right? And we're just like instantly back in the family system. I think the answer is twofold, or let me say, not the answer, let me say the tools are twofold. The first one is to say to yourself, Kia Tillman, I am a grown-ass woman. I'm not 4 or 6 or 12 or 14. I'm a grown-ass woman or a grown-ass man or a grown-ass person, human being, who has decided to live a life a certain way, in a certain style, with a certain set of belief systems. And despite what anybody else thinks, including myself, I'm actually an adult. You laugh. I find this to be an enormously effective tool, because what we are doing is moving out of our family systems and moving out of our habitual ways of responding and reconnecting with the adult within us. And the adult within us is a doorway to the spiritual truth of who we are. So if I can get to that place of adult, then I can often get to that place of standing in my most deeply centered state. Sometimes that centered state seems very powerful. Other times it seems very peaceful. Sometimes it's very quiet. Other times it feels the need to speak, because truth needs to be spoken, at least the way that I see it. If everybody else is blasting out truth, then we get to do the same. But we also get to do it in the way that is in alignment with being an adult, and which is in alignment with being a spiritual being. Now, what will happen as you start doing this is the entire place will go crazy, because you're no longer playing by the rules. Yes. You will be confronted, called names, told you're not doing it right. What happened to you? What are you doing? Because you're not playing by the rules. And when you get those kinds of responses, celebrate. Because it means you're no longer playing by the rules of the system. You haven't fallen back in. You are trying to stand your ground, be centered, be yourself. I think that's the first piece of the tool. The second piece of the tool for me, and I really want you to hear this carefully because I want us to be very careful that in our spirituality we don't become arrogant. But I noticed that the more willing I was to not fall into the patterns, the more I could see the patterns. And the more that I could see the patterns, the more compassion I had for people who were still locked in them. Because I know what that feels like, don't you? Oh my God, don't you know what it feels like when you're afraid, trying to control everything? You got your mind racing, you want to make sure you're right, you got to make sure and you want to, all that dysfunction and craziness, right? Those are coping skills that we all have from childhood, that we all created, however we created them from our families, right? And as we stand, not only in our psychological adult, but in our spiritual truth, the patterns within ourselves become more available to us, and we are learning how to take responsibility for them without shame and blame. Yes? And so we give the same gift to others without shame and blame. And when we can do it without shame and blame, my experience is that all of a sudden my compassion is activated because I remember what that feels like. Yeah, an hour ago, right? Yesterday, I was there. 2 days ago, a month ago, a year ago. Not in an arrogant, oh, look at how spiritual I am. I'm so much more spiritual. Could you just grow up? Right? We want to be really clear. That is not compassion. Compassion is a recognition that we've been in that same hole, and we've been in that same swirl, and we know how uncomfortable it is, we know how difficult it can be, we know how painful it can be, we know how much projection can come out of it, and we know how much denial can come out of it. Why? Because we've done it ourselves. Amen. And now compassion is available. The last tool I would say, so that helps me listen patiently, be in the room, not get hooked, not get involved. When I get involved or when I get hooked, then I have to have compassion for myself. Oh, look, there you went. You were 12. Whoops. Oh, no. That was not good. Breathe, center, recenter, right? And then the last tool that I would give you that I found to be extraordinarily beneficial with my father, who died an alcoholic, rageaholic, angry, and bitter old man, who I had learned to fall in love with a whole different way as an adult, using these very tools I'm sharing with you. The last piece of it that was really important, that took me a long time to understand, was the creating of my own boundaries of safety. And so boundaries aren't about what you'll do. Boundaries are about what I'll do. That was like a monumental revelation, because I wanted it to be for you to change, right? So I managed to navigate. I can stay this long with my father when I visited him. I can engage for a conversation with this period of time. That's about as long as I can hold my center. And then I'm going to have to get up. I'm going to go to the restroom. I'm going to go to get the kitchen. I'm going to say I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to gently close whatever tirade is happening, and I'm going to exit. I also know that by 8 o'clock, I was tired enough and enough alcohol had been drunk that, we were on a slippery slope. And so at 8 o'clock, I would go to my room. I read my book. I just quietly, gently, no, I'm going to my room because you are so dysfunctional. No. Just, I'm going to just take some time for myself, and I'll see you in the morning. Go to my room, read my book, hang out, be quiet, recenter myself, breathe, so that I could be present the next day. And we get to do that. So part of our yes to other people includes a no that creates safety and boundaries for us. Did I say that in a way that made sense? If I'm really going to allow somebody to be exactly who they are, hear that arrogance. I'm allowing you to be exactly who you are. So let us rephrase that. If I'm going to really work to not have judgment about who you are, that's going to be work. And so then I get to say, okay, I need a break. I need a breather. And so we have to take those because we're grown-ups. And if somebody is a little miffed about that, well, I have a dear friend who says they can get glad in the same pants they got mad in. Going home to your family at the holidays could be one of the deepest spiritual practices that is available to us. And if you take it up like that, you will not only survive, you will thrive. And eventually, over enough period of time, your family will be interested in what's happening to you. They will be very curious. Thanks for that question. Okay, we have a comment here or topic or.
So my name's Aisha. I've been blessed to, grow up in these teachings, go to camp my whole life. But as I'm getting older, I have never called my mom so much and cried. Like the older I'm getting, I feel like almost the less I know. And just turning 24, I literally feel like in this world, I'm almost like going through cycles and periods of just doing the same thing over and over again. And then it's like one step forward, two steps back. And especially in the worlds we're in, it's almost really hard to like keep your head above water. So when you kind of get in that cycle and that same space of just constantly, like doing the same thing and feeling kind of below the water, are there essentially things that kind of like connect you back to knowing it's all growth? The older you get, the better it does get, hopefully. But
it's a great question. I'm sorry you're 24. My 20s were awful. And yet there was so much growth in 24 and the 20s. I found Science of Mind when I was 19. And I thought after I decided to become a minister, I graduated when I was 24 and decided to go and I started my first community and was shocked to discover that I didn't know everything. Oh my gosh. I think that's really truthfully, I'm completely truthful. I believe that that's what the 20s are about. I think that we become we spend so much time from the time we are born developing our psyche. Even though there's a kernel of us that knows who we are, we're developing our psyche, we're developing a healthy ego, we're developing who we are, and it's not yet developed yet. And so we're trying on different things. And we try on different behaviors, and we try on philosophies, and we try on things that we like or don't like. And they begin to coalesce into something, which is great, but we've only tried them on. I think what happens in our 20s is we go through the curriculum again, only now is it real? Is this really me? Is this what speaks to me? And we are moving through the same growth curriculum, but just at a different level, because we are actually now older. The executive functions are starting to come online. right? Between 24 and 28 is when we have our executive functions, our ability to really seriously prioritize critical thinking, not criticizing, critical exploration. And we do actually understand that the things we know to be true, we accepted uncritically, not criticizing, but unexamined. And so in our 20s, part of the reason why we feel like we don't know anything is because everything is being re-examined. I promise you that the 30s will be better. The 40s will be great. The 50s will be amazing. The 60s, you don't give a shit what anybody else thinks anymore. The 70s are like, wow, what is happening? There's something new. And we move into our sage, and the 80s are like, I am looking over the horizon. And there's so my mother told me every decade gets better. I promise you. I promise you. I promise you. If you will stick to being curious, being willing to grow, being willing to learn, being willing to explore, and then to be willing to own the pieces that slowly but surely begin to settle in as this is actually something I know. I know it about myself. I know it about what's important to me. I know it about the... They begin to be for me, that's the way in which we are individuating spirit. Right? Because it's unique and precious and it's yours. And that, yeah. So I guess I want to give you a vision of what's possible. I know a lot of people that for the 20s is very challenging. And if you it's good you're doing this in your 20s, because if you don't do it in your 20s, that turns into that midlife crisis thing. And the not so pleasant midlife crisis thing because we haven't really made friends with who we are. And we continue to carry the masks and the things that we've been trying on that we think we know. I could go on and on and on and on. I think teenagers and young adults are the most amazing people. I think it's the most amazing time. I think it's very, very, very unsettling. It needs to be unsettling. And there's so much there. So I hope that is a little bit helpful. I'm always here. And I know you've got lots of other people that are always here. Yeah, I'm going to stop talking now. Please.
Hello.
Hi.
I agree with what you were saying about the 20s. I'm 33, so there was something that just shifted. I did most of my spiritual work in my 20s and then kind of fell off the last few years, and I'm getting back on the wagon. I have a 1-year-old.
Wow. Yay, congratulations. Tell me your name, please.
Yeah, Nini Sterling.
Hi, Nini.
Yeah. Birth name is Janine, but go by Nini. So I have a two-faceted question. And it's interesting because one of the facets you kind of touched on with the boundary, with the self thing. But it's about having multiple disabilities, physical and mental, then also having, I guess, more responsibilities than one can actually take care of mindfully. And so everything kind of falls apart. And the question's two-faceted because let me start with one facet. I know that some of the beliefs here and also other places that I've been talk a lot about neuroplasticity and positive thinking and things like this. And I've read You Are the Placebo. I've read a lot of books, gone to a lot of things. But, in the end, I do have these disabilities. And one of the reasons that I took a while to come here, because I thought about it when I was a bit younger, is that I was afraid that, like everyone else, I was going to be told, you're not positive enough. You're not trying hard enough. You have to think this way. You have to think that way. And therefore, it becomes toxic positivity. It becomes like a guilt trip. And instead of by the regular religion, it's like, oh, you don't believe you're gonna go to hell. It's like, oh, well, you're not doing this positively enough, so you're just hitting yourself. This is your fault. And then you talked about boundaries, and I'm like, I realized for a long time I really wanted to control what other people said to me about my disability or about who I am. And in the end, like you were saying, you can only know who you are and have that internal locus of control.
Right.
So no matter what you say, even if you say, oh, to my other question, my two-faceted, I know that I have these disabilities, and I also know that that doesn't mean I can't change them, but they are going to be there.
So let's just stop right there.
Yeah.
Right? So I think what we have is a confusion about the difference between perfection and wholeness.
Yeah.
So you can be completely whole without being physically perfect. So we are only perfect on the absolute level. The minute the infinite has incarnated as the finite, it is already not perfect. But we are whole. We are wholly ourselves. Just the other day, so one of the things I've noticed recently is that my dyslexia has kicked in a big way because I feel like I'm under a lot of stress. So the more stressed I am, the more dyslexia kicked in. I used to find that challenging and embarrassing, and so I don't anymore. I just go, oh, that was my dyslexia. And somebody said, don't label yourself that way. And I said, no, I'm not labeling myself. I'm acknowledging so that I can make a different choice in the moment about how I'm going to proceed. Or I'm bringing to my own awareness, oh my God, that's what just happened. No wonder I'm confused, and I've confused everybody else in the room, right? So there's a difference between acknowledging what is and being not positive. Because acknowledging what is allows us to then say, well, now what? Well, one of the things, now what, is I'm very careful when I sort laundry. Because I go white, black, white, black, white, black, black, white, black, white, and I don't even know it. And all of a sudden I have a mess. Right? So we learn to accommodate our physical, and I mean body, mind, and body, mind, the physicality of us. We learn to accommodate ourselves. We have years ago we had a woman here in our community. She was in a car accident, and when she was 19, she severed her spinal cord and ended up in a wheelchair. And she spent 10 years trying to move her toe. And she believed that because she wasn't able to move her toe that she wasn't doing it right. And she had people say to her, if you were really spiritual and you were really doing this, you would move your toe and you would get up and walk. We don't do that here. We are not anybody else's thought or consciousness police. We do not police anybody else's consciousness. We police our own consciousness. What we give to others is love. Right? Love and acceptance. And so, but ultimately, she discovered that she needed to give that to herself. And she decided all of that freaking spiritual mind treatment and work she was doing and consciousness and all of that to move her toe, she could actually use to have a full, rich, meaningful life. Hallelujah. So she just decided, you know what? I'm in a wheelchair. It sucks. I hate it. I wish I weren't. And I'm in a wheelchair. And she was one of the most whole people I know. She neither defended or denied or put, it was just, this person happens to be in a wheelchair. This person happens to have certain disabilities, right? And that's what it means to be whole. We are wholly ourselves. We are Holy Spirit showing up in the world. And then we get to make whatever choices we can or are able to make in the management of that, right? And how we take it up. And some things we can change and some things we accept so that we can go move on and have the life that we choose to have. So there's a lot of compassion that we have to give to ourselves. I have long learned I'm ridiculously socially awkward. I am very uncomfortable in with people. I'm hugely introverted. I'm intimidatingly smart, and I've just had to make peace with all of these things. And I just as soon, crawl under a rock if I need to be a certain way that's not that. And I've had to make peace with all of those things. And I've had to find my strengths and my gifts and let them be what shines. That's what I think it means to be positive, not toxic. Oh, I always have to be cheerful, and I always have to think everything's perfect, and I always have to think it's going to be different. No, it's being compassionate and seeing our own wholeness and doing with what we have, giving it all to life, doing what we can with it, and loving ourselves exactly and precisely the way we are. Because I think that is life showing up as you, whole, perfect, and complete, just the way you are. Thank you for your question. Thank you. All right, so we are way over time. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your patience and for your care. I'm happy to talk with you afterwards. Super love to do this with all of you. I'm always available to do these kinds of things, you know that. And so I think I need to stop talking now, Joe. Come rescue me.